A recent study out of Norway says that 2/3 of the world's rainforests have either been destroyed or degraded, and this has very serious implications for climate change and severe weather going forward. So we're going to speak to Robert Nasi, who is the Director General of CIFOR, a forestry research institute in Indonesia, about deforestation. Welcome to the interview, Robert.
Welcome, and happy to be here.
Well, so humans have destroyed or degraded 2/3 of the world's rainforest. That it's kind of mind-boggling to a non-forestry expert. How accurate is this study, and what's your response to it?
Well, I think overall the picture is not very good. It's true that we have largely degraded or destroyed a significant large amount of forest. Have we destroyed 2/3 of the forests? I'm not sure, because it's always a sort of, what is your baseline? And if you put the baseline far enough in the past, we may have destroyed more than 2/3 or less than 2/3, because in fact forests are not immovable things. I mean, they move, they change, they adapt to the climate. A large part of the Congo Basin was savanna 1,000 years ago, around 1,000 years ago. Now it's covered in forest. So I'm not sure if we have lost the 2/3 of the original forest. What I'm pretty sure is that the situation of the forest now is not as good as it should be.
Now, a lot of the forest that has been lost lately has been in Latin America, and particularly in the Amazon. It's been lost to agriculture. So, people are responding to economic signals. They're trying to make a better life for their family. How in the world do we reverse deforestation in the face of those kinds of pressures?
If you look at also historically, I mean, a sort of agriculture has been the main cause of deforestation, together with the use of forest resources to make charcoal or wood energy for steel industry. So that's what is happening now in the Amazon or in the other part of the tropics. It's something that happened in European country, and then because of various change, more people living in city, there has been what we call a forest transition, and then we have a regrowing forest estate, though different in the temperate zone. The problem what is happening is that you don't see any really real slowdown of the deforestation in the tropics, and 80% of this deforestation is indeed due to agricultural practice. And we are still using about 80% of the wood that is cut in the tropic is used for non very efficient energy generation. So I think that we can probably do better, and do better by changing the way agriculture is conducted, and by changing the way incentives are given to people. I mean, it's sort of, if you pay people well enough for their product so that they can live on half an hectare, they are not going to deforest 20 hectares. If they can scrape a living only on 20 hectares, they are going to deforest 20 hectares. I mean, that's one of the problems. And if you look at the amount of wood that goes into smoke, because currently the wood to charcoal yield ratio is about 17%. I mean, it's sort of, if you double the efficiency of the system, you can imagine, I mean, how much wood you can save. So I think we all know, or we have the technical solution. The problem is not a technical one. The problem is a one of a development choice, incentive, societies.
Right. So is there the political will at the international level, and are international institutions like perhaps the United Nations taking action on this?
I think we are at a stage where there is a genuine political will. I mean, you can see that with the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. You can see that forest and nature has been playing a major role in the media this last month, and for no small extent because of the pandemic and the whole issue of this imbalance between human development and nature. Now, the problem that we face is that the political will at the international agenda should translate into something at the national level that should translate into something on the ground. And we often have this link missing, so that people are doing something on the ground that the international agenda doesn't know. Then there is trillions of dollars of money that are willing to be invested into a nature-based solution, but then they don't reach the people. So we only have a problem of an architecture that will help linking all these elements at the local level, national level, and the international level, which is something that we try to do with the Global Landscape Forum, but we are still far from what we should do.
Now, if this is about political will, Robert, what can the ordinary citizen in Canada or the United States or one of the European countries, what can the ordinary citizen do?
It's a difficult question because our individual choice, although they matter, they don't really matter as much as we think they are in terms of the global picture. It's the same with fossil fuel and so on. And sometimes it's very difficult to have a choice. I mean, so when you buy toilet paper, ultimately what you buy is wood that has been cut to be transformed in paper. So how do you know that your toilet paper has been produced from wood that is grown sustainably? Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't. So it's the same with wood that is for floor. So I think it's a matter for the individual to look at the way we consume and to try not to overconsume, try to look at products that have been paid a fair price to the producer, that are grown or produced sustainably, that don't come from illegal logging. So, but it's not always easy. It's not always easy, and even for procurement at the national level, even it's not that easy. So it's a tricky question. And we all know that the point is that everybody uses about half a cubic meter of wood per year. I mean, that's sort of, so we need to know which wood we're using.
You had mentioned earlier, you brought up the example of Europe, which is at one point in the not too distant future, 200-300 years, had been denuded of forests almost, and now all that many of those have been restored. Does that give us hope that if we can mobilize at the international level to stop deforestation, that we can bring those forests back?
We have several examples that show that if there is a political will with economic incentive and a real cause for that, it's possible to restore a large amount of forest. Look at Korea. I mean, in the 60s, I mean, the place was almost a barren land. I mean, it's sort of, now it's 70% covered in forest. So it's possible, and there you have other examples. The problem is that how do you carry out restoration? Is it a monoculture? Is it thing? So that you really have to think about the right tree, the right place, and for the right usage. And sometimes monoculture is not too bad. I mean, sometimes you want to restore ecological system and you need a different thing. So, but it's possible. That's the main problem. The main problem is not technical. The main problem is investment. You need money up front, even if you know that you will get ultimately some return. So you need money up front, and there is not enough money in the public system for that. So you need money from the private sector to invest in restoration as an economic enterprise. If we don't get that, I mean, it's not going to work, because we cannot always do like Korea did in the 60s and put the whole population 2 days a week to plant trees. I mean, it's sort of, it doesn't work. It works in certain contexts, but not in all contexts.
I've interviewed some of your colleagues from CIFOR about the RED Plus program, which partly brings private capital in to solve this problem. Are there any other plans or strategies for private capital to play a bigger role in reforestation?
Yeah, you see that more and more. I mean, it's like you see, for example, there was an announcement a couple of days ago of Total planting trees in the Plateau Bateke in Gabon, and you see some other oil majors that are using natural-based solution and mainly planting trees and reforestation to offset some of their emission, which is problematic because in fact we need to reduce the emission on top of offsetting. So, but yes, you see a mushrooming of enterprise that was business is to restore land using a private capital, and some enterprise that in fact are using that as a true business and making profit by regenerating forest and creating forest assets for private investors. And this type of investment forestry is a long-term issue. It's something that is interesting for pension funds, sovereign fund, because you don't get maybe the double-digit return, but it's a long-term. The main risk is the whole issue of permanence. I mean, sort of, if the trees you plant are burning, then you lost everything. So the whole question of you need to address at the same time seriously climate change. I mean, we need to reduce our emissions in parallel to restoring land and restoring forests.
Final question. I'm going to put you on the hot seat a little bit. Are you optimistic that we will be able to solve this problem?
I don't know if I will be able to solve this problem, but I'm always optimistic because I don't think that we can afford to be pessimistic or to let it go. I mean, a sort of. So I will say that I'm a cautious optimist, and I know that we can do it. Maybe we will not do it, but our children will do it. But if you think about the amount of money that we use in terms of making weapons, which is 1,300 billion per year, I mean, sort of, if we were investing this money in terms of restoring the balance of nature, I mean, we can do it. We have the technology. We have the people, there is the interest, I mean, sort of show us the money.
Robert, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.